time, we have former senior diplomat J.S. Mukul to talk about it. Good evening to you, Ambassador Mukul. What do you make of this move, piling up further pressure on Iran and making matters clearly worse for perhaps the Iranian people? The US already has unilateral sanctions against it, but now UN-level sanctions will snap back. What sort of an impact do you foresee will that have?
Good evening. Yes, I think it's a setback in the whole process of trying to get some agreement after the JCPOA has been in limbo because it was abrogated in Trump 2.0. Then there were negotiations, as you know, going on. But during the middle of the negotiation, the U.S. bombing of the nuclear sites took place. And therefore, it has completely disrupted trust between the two sides. Now, you rightly pointed out that the US unilateral sanctions have been enforced, but the UN sanctions snapping back will definitely have a number of impacts. First, it'll harden positions on both sides. As we have already seen the Iranian reaction, they have said that they will not bow to pressure. I think no self-respecting country would do that. At the same time, it would have an economic impact on Tehran and on Iran and the Iranian people, because that will create economic difficulties for them. Further economic difficulties, they already are facing a lot of challenges. So that is there. In terms of India, I read a news report saying that we have sent our consignment through Chabahar to the humanitarian assistance that we provide to the Afghan people in the aftermath of the devastating earthquake that took place. So I think that one consignment has been sent in order to beat the sanctions which will come into play on Saturday the 29th. So yes, there will be all-round impact. I think the full ramifications will be apparent when the sanctions kick in. But that is something that we can presume. One, to summarize, it was also interesting, I think, to note in this context that Russia and China tried to push back, but they were not successful in the UN Security Council. But I think to summarize the impact, one, it would further deteriorate the economic situation, and the economic pressure would increase on the Iranian regime, and the people there would are likely to face difficulties. That is in the short term. Of course, the Iranian stance has been defiant. They say that we have faced these sanctions in the past and they are not likely to bow down to this pressure. So, and I think it further takes away the possibility of any sort of a via media being found in this ongoing long pending issue of Iran, which of course denies that it is having or making nuclear weapons, whereas the West continues to sort of have doubts on that. So this is a further deterioration of that.
And apart from all this, what you mentioned, could there also be any sort of precipitative fallout? And I don't use that term lightly, fallout, just because it's interesting wordplay.
No, I mean, obviously the sanctions when they kick in, they will have ramifications, as I said, first, but primarily on Iran, because really the economy there is in a very bad shape. And that is, I think, the objective of the Western powers, to further put pressure on the regime. But personally, I don't see that working. It has not worked fully in the past. Yes, they do create problems for the people, but I don't see that. In terms of any precipitative action, I don't think immediately we would expect anything. But as I said, the most important impact of that is a further widening of the rift between Iran and these interlocutors. I must also say that the Iranians find themselves in a difficult position, because on one side, when they were negotiating for a new JCPOA, those negotiations while they were actually going on, were interrupted by the American bombing, which normally should not happen, because when you're in the midst of a negotiations, you expect that at least you wait till they fructify or they break down. But this happened in the middle, so complete breakdown of trust on both sides, and now this added sanctions. So yes, I do see a further distancing from any possible solution in the near future.
Well, we have to recall for everyone's benefit that the American attack only followed what the Israelis had done, and Israel still remains a very unpredictable factor in all this.
Absolutely. I mean, Israel is acting in a manner that is creating a lot of discomfort in not just in Iran, but the West Asia as a whole. We also saw that in the middle of the negotiations with the Hamas, which were going on with Qatar, in Qatar, the Israelis bombed there, and that disrupted those particular negotiations completely. So, and further ramifications of that, which forced immediately as a quick response the Saudis to start to enter into the agreement, the defense security agreement with Pakistan, because frankly, the Gulf states have been completely relying so far for many years and decades on the US providing them the security. But I think the US stands quite discredited in their eyes because the US was already losing ground, but I think this was the last straw, so to say, when the Israelis bombed Qatar. And also, you're right, when the Israelis Israeli attack on Iran took place earlier, that again was something that was precipitative. But what I think came as a shock was the US joining into that bombing, which again was, as I said, in the midst of negotiations. So normally in diplomacy, this is not done. It's unheard of that while the negotiations are going on, you at least wait till the results, whatever they may be, positive or otherwise. But in both these cases, the bombing took place while the negotiations were ongoing.
And another unpredictable factor always that keeps on coming with all kinds of putting all kinds of rabbit out of his hat is Donald Trump. Do you feel that he could step in and do something dramatic in this case?
Well, I think nobody has been able to predict Mr. Trump till now, what he will do or what he will not do. He's a completely mercurial figure, and his actions and his statements seem to come as a surprise on top of the other. In fact, as we speak, I think the world is going through a very, very dramatic flux. The whole world in general, but I think particularly the West Asian region is in the tectonic shifts taking place there. There are cataclysmic, if I could put it, cataclysmic, kind of actions happening all around, and the situation, of course, is moving very fast. Thanks again to the complete carte blanche which the United States seems to have granted to Israel in the region. So much so that even some of Israel's major allies in the West, like UK, Germany, France, and so many others, have been now sort of persuaded to recognize Palestine as a state. And I think that is again, so number of developments because of the Israeli actions, the Saudi Park deal I pointed out, and now the recognition by some of these very important countries, including permanent members of the UN Security Council like UK and France, and many other NATO and Western allies of Israel, who have recognized Palestine as a state. So I think, yes, some of these actions may be ill-advised in that sense, because I don't think the objective of Israel would have been to make this happen. But that is the way it has turned out. So we will see. But also at the UN General Assembly, we heard Prime Minister Netanyahu, again very strong and very sort of no sense of aggressive in his attitude. So I think again a hardening of positions on all sides.
Right.
So that is something that is, I think, does not sort of bode well for peace in the region, again, at least in the short run.
Okay. Well, let's leave it at there, and let's hope that things don't deteriorate any further. We don't want another conflict to begin in the region. There's always a lot of debate over whether Iran can really sustain any sort of a conflict with either Israel or any of the Western nations. But we've seen how indirectly assets of the US have been targeted in the past, and that might be one of the responses that Iran could resort to. But let's hope that doesn't happen. Thanks a lot for joining us for the time being.